Hi, today I'm going to talk about a topic that I have been digging or that just caught my attention. But let's talk a bit about the internet connectivity and how this begins. Because I was looking at many articles and many researches that says that they say the internet of things and the evolution and how it applies to different areas, industries, and others. But in the 1990s, internet connectivity began to proliferate in enterprise and consumer markets, but was still limited in, in its use because of the low performance of the network interconnect. In the 2000s, internet connectivity became the norm for many applications, and today is expected as part of any enterprise. Industrial and consumer products provide access to information. However, these devices are still primarily things on the internet that require more human interaction and monitoring through apps and interfaces. The true promise of the Internet of Things is just starting to be realized when invincible technology operates behind the scenes, dynamically responding to how we want things to act. The world back in the day has deployed about 5 billion smart connected things. Predictions say that we can be up to 50 billion by 2030. Back in the day, that prediction was for 2020, but nowadays we haven't reached that number yet. But still, those are really big numbers. How things are fundamentally deployed today is a barrier to realizing those numbers. The industry will only achieve the reality of 50 billion connecting devices by simplifying how things connect and communicate today. And the first time I read that number, I was a bit concerned and also terrified. If we were talking about 5 billion smart connected things, and nowadays it is more. We have a 50 billion prediction. That will be a lot more than human population nowadays. And that's terrifying. Really, really terrifying. But the industry will only achieve the reality of 50 billion connected devices by simplifying how things connect and communicate today. The vision of the Internet of Things will not happen right away. The scale required will only be achieved by creating a lowest common denominator, simple messaging scheme that everyone on the planet will agree to. It will have to be digitally organic, imitating nature. And look how nature works. It is just like change of connections that we don't even see. Aside from us, most of human beings, they don't have to ask themselves every day or on a period of their lives what they want to do, how they want to be, which path they have to follow, which norms they have to obey. They just, at the time, they are just like simply being and doing, applying their behaviors based on their species and other things. And isn't that amazing? It's just that they already have the instruction based on it. They don't need to question anything about it, and they just do it. And what they do is so important that it keeps the cycle going and going and going. We don't do that. We don't have that possibility. At the present, technology protocols and data structures are limited by their design complexity as well as security, extensibility, and much more. Our connected devices will have to become easier to use, even though the complexity of the devices will increase. The line between analog and digital will blur. Every person on the planet will be able to author his or her own life environment, even though they know basically nothing about the underlying technology. So imagine just this case scenario. The complexity of the devices, the smart devices will increase. While at the same time, we will need those to be easier to use. So it's not going like both lines to the same way. It's not going our capacity, advancement, and evolution paced at the same rhythm of these devices. Manufacturers have been connecting things to the internet before we called it the internet. By the mid 1990s, web servers were being added to embedded products. Some M2M manufacturers have been integrating internet connected systems into high value asset tracking, alarm systems, fleet management, and the like for more than 15 years. These M2M systems are challenging to build even though some are based on industry standard protocols. It is getting easier to integrate M2M systems as more powerful processors are incorporated into the end nodes. And since these processors support high level operating systems and languages, the platform can leverage intelligent frameworks. These systems are typically tied into high-end business service layers and are managed by a network operations center. Consumers already have connected things like thermostats, energy meters, lighting control systems, music streaming and control systems, remote video streaming boxes, pool systems, and irrigation systems, with more to come. Most of these systems have some connectivity through a website so that a user can manage them through a standard web browser or a smartphone app, which acts as a personal NOC. While both the industrial and consumer scenarios are exciting, deployment is not simplified since they are all disparate vertical systems. This system may use the exact same protocols and OS underpinnings, but the communications layers are inconsistent. Each also uses open application programming interfaces without a horizontal connection, which will lead to easier cross application integration. Take, for example, a sprinkle control system. It can have a level of intelligence so it knows when to water based on sensors and internet weather data under a control you can program. However, it does not know anything about motion sensors around a house that might indicate a person to delay the zone to avoid drenching the dog or kids. There are no motion sensor inputs on the sprinkle controller, or very sad, a sprinkler. So auto motion control vertical integration needs to be used to transfer data to another cloud server. then the two cloud servers need to be glued together somehow. Hopefully, both system integrations allow for some small amount of additional control. However, hope is never a good word in electronic systems. An additional vertical application grading in Perl, Python, and PHP, or another programming language on a server can program a connection that allows motion to delay the sprinkler zone or the or other logic the user may want. This is not easy unless you're an expert and formally to rapid development or deployment. But that's just now. Let's see what happens in the future, right? This needs to connect vertical integrations, and this has led to the formation of new web services. So we have different applications, and when we see a household, all these technological integrations that we don't know how they were installed itself. We just get into a home and some of them are already there. We don't know how they process, how they work, how they function, and therefore we just need to adapt and live with them. We just need to adapt and know how to manage it. And this is something that could be concerning since we're just accepting things as they are instead of just questioning why they are there in the first place. Yes, it serves a purpose. It's one of them, but why not just giving me a lesson on how it works? Why not mind the person that is going to live in that house, for example, to know how each of those devices work? How we cannot get like a course or something every time we need to use or acquire something that has an addition of a GPS, for example. Some type of device that has to do with something like bigger with a bigger sensor or something. We are just launched into a bunch of things, but corporations they just forget to tell the society or actually the main point in my opinion is that they just forget to take into account the human diaspora outside of the cells purpose. So we have the purpose of making it accessible to everybody. We have the purpose to make it easier to use to everybody. But what about the human guidelines on how to introduce this to the society so it won't create a lot of concerns, negative consequences, and new mental and physical disorders in the future for the society. Some of those cannot be avoided, but I think if we just make like a plan and if we show that alongside when we launch like a new technological product, that would be awesome. It's like, for example, when you get any meds, it's just like you have your piece of paper. You have your piece of paper that is going to tell you the secondary effects. It's like, yeah, if I take this and now I know all this stuff can happen to myself. Why not smart devices, smart mobile devices, or the ones for your home, for your car, related? Why they don't have that label, but printed like that everyone can see every time that they open that new device? It's not like, yeah, on a website on number 529 landing page that they created so they can go ahead with the guidelines of any territory. And that could be hypothetical, right? But it's just like, no, like make it really visible. If you really care about how human society is going to be affected by your new product, a product that is going to affect the masses. For example, when you have like those type of products and services that could do that, why don't you print that? I think we have some some type of right to know that, but at the same time, some type of law isn't going along with that. For example, it could be, well, sometimes I get amazed about things like that. And in the meantime, while we don't have that piece of paper, um, it is also hard to argue that the internet as we know it today was born of altruistic intent by Tim Berners-Lee to connect everyone around the world with an open platform. Prior, there were only proprietary enterprise networks with little to no sharing of information. The verticals of the pre-internet days. Today, we have manufacturers that have a multitude of vertical application requirements. Some may be altruistic, but most have money behind their requirements. Without that, there will be no next steps. However, there will be an altruistic requirement to gain horizontal balance. The IoT of tomorrow will be the largest horizontal system architecture ever created. Vertical applications will continue to exist. However, the fundamental lowest levels of connectivity and information passing will need to be ubiquitous and invisible in all applications. Additionally, horizontal balance will require the Internet of Things to look more like an organic system, as we were mentioning in the past, almost like nature. When cells replicate, they pass fundamental information from one cell to another in the form of DNA. Cells combine to form a hierarchy of automatic mechanisms that use a nervous system to build and protect its cellular architecture. The body's form of horizontal integration. A human has trillions of cells that are very resilient and can work for more than 100 years without a reboot. It is no wonder why organic systems are being studied as a basis for fundamental information and device architecture. And that is our role model to replicate the systems of nature. We have an example that we see, that we perceive through all of our senses, sometimes less, sometimes more, every day. And since we don't get it 100%, we don't get it in full, we try to replicate those lines and connections that we don't even see. So now we have the internet, and we want that system to work as well as nature. It's the nature we're seeing its planet nowadays. That could sound like a bit out of our minds. That could sound a bit dangerous. That could sound like why replicating something that is already out there and here and everywhere. But also, it's like it's amazing how we also want to shape something like that. A system that from the outside might seem so perfect that we still are studying every single day. There are academics just studying how nature works. And if we want to replicate that system, then we will have a system that will defend itself, that will replicate itself, that will start processes even unconsciously. If we can even talk about unconscious at this point. But if we want to replicate it, I think at some point we would like to make it like us, wouldn't we? But one also might conclude that the internet has the characteristics of an organic system. However, the internet of today has most of its traffic aggregated into very large data pipes. The original internet was a much flatter looking entity and more peer to peer in nature. Bandwidth requirements were fairly low, with the largest consumer of bandwidth being simple messaging traffic. Media and time critical data forced the emerge of those big pipes. Client server architecture is dominant today, primarily driven by content aggregators and big pipe companies. As the industry progresses, there will be a gradual shift back to the original flatter architecture. Fab pipes will not go away, as heavy bandwidth and time critical requirements will still exist. However, when trillions of connecting devices exist in the IoT, there will be numerous paths for data flow. The aggregate bandwidth of this massive peer-to-peer platform will far exceed the performance of fat pipes. Since there will be no way to regulate the network, it will become completely neutral and basically invincible. But that is the hypothesis or the thesis of this paper. They say that their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, will not even know what an internet connection was. That assumes, of course, that we eventually all agree on the fundamental currency of the internet of things. But what do you think about it? Do you think that we will go into this roots motion and will not talk about the internet at some point and we will just not use it anymore? Or do you think that it's going to replicate so rapidly that it's going to pass not the 50 billions, the 100 billions, and now we just cannot go and get rid of it anymore? And it just keeps replicating. If we actually get that ultimate point to make it a system very similar to nature. So let me know, what's your prediction?